Start today the Torah Way, Northwest London, Tuesday 5th of Elul, 22nd of August. Rabbi Jeremy Golker, Shlita, Parsha Thoughts. This week's Torah Way has been sponsored Lichvod Simchas Havar Mitzvah of Shlomo Spitzer and Yossi Emmanuel. Last Shabbos Parsha Shotim, Hi Rotze and Shizku Horeim, Ziknehem, Ruv Nachas Mehem, Umikol Yotzei Cholotehem. And today's share is also sponsored Le'ilu Nishmas Reb Shlomo ben Menachem. The late Mr. Shlomo Gallandau is a long-standing member of Torah Way. As he outside this today, 5th of Elul.
Okay, good morning. Good morning. It's nice to be back in Torah Way. The share is also on Torah anytime, and feel free to follow, to share. Three ideas from this week's Parsha. There's a handout going around, and if you're listening online, email me at j.golker@gmail.com. I'll send you the handout. Three ideas on Parshas Teitzei. Parshas Teitzei begins with a continuation of a discussion about war. Teitzei la melchoma alevecha. And really this is a continuation of a theme that is picked up on in last week's Parsha, Parsha Shoftim, where we talk about the Meshuach Milchama. He goes out, and before the battle he gives the sort of the pep talk to the army, to the soldiers, and we talk about Hashchos Silonis, the love, the Issa, not to cut down any fruit-bearing tree. And then you move on to this week's Edra, Kisei Salam Milchama with the fast Toya. But what's curious is that before we move on to the continuation of Milchama, you have the story of Egla Arufa, which seems to be sandwiched in the middle of episodes of Milchama, of war. What has that got to do with Milchama? That's the first question. In other words, the introduction to this week's Parsha is Egla Arufa at the very end of last week's Sedra. Egla Arufa is, of course, where you have a person who was killed, no one knows who killed him, and there's a whole sequence of events that the Beis Din, the Sanhedrin, have got to get involved, and the whole procedure. But why is that the introduction to this week's Sedra? And question number two, we know in last week's Parsha, when we talk about Milchama, the Meshuach Milchama stands up, and he gives various exceptions to people who go to battle. They can actually go home. So one of them is someone who just got married, or he built a new house, or he built a vineyard. Now these are somewhat curious exceptions. I don't know if any of you have ever been summoned for a jury service, but if you reply and say, I just built a vineyard, and I would like to just enjoy my grapes and my wine, I don't think it's going to get you off. So what is that about? Why is that an exception? And a third question, which I've always been troubled by, which I think Baruch Hashem, I have an answer to now, is we know what the exceptions are. So why bring them to the battleground, to the border, and the Meshuach Milchama stands up and says, right, anyone who is scared, anyone who has built a house, anyone who's built a vineyard, anyone who just got married, you can go home. Well, why trouble them to go there in the first place and then send them home? Just give them the patur from day one. So I once heard an answer, I forget where I saw this, but I think it's a very beautiful answer. When the Torah talks about war is a very painful, sad, sometimes necessary parsha, topic in life, a reality of life. But the danger of war is that we lose appreciation for human life. Life is devalued. Its blood is, if you like, cheap. And the danger of, therefore, we're encountering, that Meshuach Milchama will have to sort of address, is to negate the negative consequence of war. And he has to therefore explain that human life is very important. And therefore, the Torah takes the Parsha of Egla Arufa and thrusts it in the middle of Milchama, because the whole theme, if you like, of Egla Arufa is the value of human life. You've got one person who wasn't cared about enough. People didn't escort him. He was an anonymous person. He was a person who just sort of was wandering around. Nebuchadnezzar's been killed. We don't know who killed him. The way to counteract that is to make a whole procedure, that the whole Beis Din, the Sanhedrin, come along and we say that we value human life. And that is important for the soldiers to hear before they go out to battle. And therefore the Mashiach Nechama, he brings the people to battle, and he says to them, human life is important. Life is not about fighting and killing. That's a sad, sometimes necessary evil of this world. But really what life is about, it's about building and having families and planting and developing and being a productive member to society. And therefore the Mashiach Nechama brings these people there. He reminds everyone about the importance of human life, because that's one of the dangers of war. And then he sends them home, but that makes an impression. You schlep them there, and then you schlep them back again, to teach us that this is really what life is about. Life is about building families, about building the homes, about having vineyards, etc. And then we address, unfortunately, the sad evil of war. So therefore, the Mashiach Nechama does that at this junction in the battle, and that's why Egla Arufa is the introduction to this week's Parsha of Kisei Nechama, and that's why we bring them there and then we send them home, and that's why we have these strange exceptions, because before we go to war we remind ourselves that Yiddishkeit is about building and not destroying, and that we value people and their contributions, even though there may be a sad occasional need for it. Okay, let's move on to the next idea. The next idea is, of course, Parshas Teitzei is, I think it's got 74 mitzvahs in the Torah. I think it's the most mitzvahs in any single parsha. So there's a lot to talk about. The next theme that I want to talk about is Ben Soira and Moira. The Rashi says, what is the lomdus of Ben Soira and Moira, this wayward child? Rashi says in Zvarim Chafal Yudches, at the beginning of paragraph 2, or Ben Soira and Moira neherag al shem soifai. He's killed because of his end. Right now he hasn't done anything wrong. But al shem soifai, Higia Torah l'soif daito, the Torah understands the eventuality of this person. Soif shemechal moment aviv, eventually he'll dissipate his parents' money, umavakish limudai, and he'll need to feed his habit, ve'ena Teitzei, and he can't afford to eat the meat and drink the wine that's he's been used to. Va'omid b'parshas Durachim, and he'll stand on the highway, umelastem es habrios, and become a highway robber. Omra Torah yomuz zakai va'al yomuz chayev. He should rather die innocent than not die chayev, because who knows where this is going to lead to. That's the famous Rashi with Ben Soira Moira. The famous kasha everyone asks is Yishmael. Yishmael. Why? Because if you look in the second box in paragraph 2, Vayishmael lekim es kol hanahar, ki shomai lekim el kol hanahar ba'asher hu shom. What's pshat ba'asher hu shom? It says Rashi, ba'asher hu shom lefi maisim shu oiseh achshav hu nidei. We judge Yishmael right now ba'asher hu shom. You're right. La'osid lovai, it's going to be terrible. But ba'asher hu shom right now, v'lo lefi mashu osid la'asos, not what he's going to do in the future, but we judge him ba'asher hu shom as he is now. Lefi shoyim malochi asharis, says Rashi, the malachim were mekatrugim v'oimri Rebbeinu Shalom. The malachim came to the Rebbeinu Shalom and said, Misha osid zara lahomis bonecha b'tzama. This Yishmael's children, his descendants, are going to kill Klal Yisrael in a very, very vicious way. Atamar lo be'er, you're going to provide him water. This is midah keneged midah. V'hu meishivam achshav mahu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu replies to the Malach Yasharis and says, listen, right now, what is he? Tzaddik or Rasha? Amru lo tzaddik, he's a tzaddik. Amru lohem, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu says back to the Malachim, Lefi ma'asav shel achshav anudonin, we're going to judge him according to his ma'asim that he is now. V'zeu ba'asher sham. That's pshat in the pasuk ba'asher sham. Right now, he's a tzaddik, he hasn't yet done anything wrong, and therefore, we don't worry about Hashem ha'asid, which is, of course, a flat contradiction to Ben Soira Moira. How do you deal with that? So that's a famous question. The Marsha, in Maseches Rosh Hashanah, he addresses this question. If you take a look at the bottom box, he says, "V'avhot Ben Soira Moira didn't need Hashem Seifei." How come the Ben Soira Moira is not treated by Asher Husham? So he says, first of all, he points you to the Re'im. The Re'im is Rabbi Mizrahi, one of the foremost commentators on Rashi. And then the Marsha gives his own pshat. The Ben Soira Umoira Nidan Hashem Seifei Shel Atzmai. Very geschmack answer. The Ben Soira Umoira is judged himself In other words, it's his future. And therefore, Masha Ein Ken B'Yishmael Al Hashem Sefer Shel Bonov Lo Nidain. The difference, of course, is with Yishmael, it's not him, it's his descendants. So therefore, we don't judge Yishmael on what his descendants are going to do. It's not him. That's the chiluk. And that's very meduyik in the pasuk. Because with Yishmael, it says, Ba'asher Husha, where he is, not his descendants. Okay. I saw a different answer in the name of Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, which I think has got a very powerful Musa lesson. If you take a look at the top of the next page, this I saw in there's a sefer, a lovely sefer called the Sitra Elyon, which brings together some Musa ideas on each parsha, and he quotes Rabbi Yisrael Salanta regarding this question. If you take a look at the top of the next page, V'kvar omad al maducha zu hagon Yisrael misalant zeichet tzadik v'kodesh levrach. The omna. Ein donim es ha'od men lefi matzah b'ois ha'shah. V'loi b'mashe oselios, you judge a person according to what he is now, not in the future. Aval b'med dvar mamurim, when is that true? She'ein ha'maisim she'b'ois ha'shah, when the current behavior, machrichim es ha'matzah she'el osid lovoi, that the matzah now is not going to dictate what is going to be in the future. Aval ben soira u'meira, na'a reik u'peiches, he's an empty, impetuous young man. He's already stealing meat. And he's becoming a bit of an alcoholic. The last his actions now, he's sort of set on a pathway which is going to lead to this. It's not a question of this is what's going to be in the future. It's a pathway that he's on right now. Ella says, it's a current issue. He's already sort of set in his ways. It's not a question about what's going to be in the future. With Yishmael, there was no simon right now that this is what's going to be. Yeah, true. But that maybe that was a slightly later point. Maybe was it?
No.
Why?
Sorry, chucked him out already.
Because he was already chucked out, and he was chucked out. True. Maybe, but then okay, true. It's good kasha. I don't know the answer to that. It's good kasha. But
himself, according to this gift of Polish Kashiva, at this point is guaranteed he can't change.
If you're already on a pathway which is going to lead to these things, yeah, but it's not, the point is not Hashem ha'osit. In other words, he's doing something right now which is leading to it. That's the point. Sorry?
The parents not punished for the children's.
So that's a separate parsha. The Sepharna says, if I'm not mistaken, it says Leishomer lekoil oviv lekoil imay. It doesn't say lekol oviv ve'imay. And then the hara the Sepharna makes is a very important parenting point. That the voice of the father and the voice of the mother are not consistent. He's getting mixed messages. So maybe there is culpability in the parents, maybe. But take a look at the next paragraph. It says Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, Olufizeh, Yesh li Hespoine in Harbe, She'odom Omed B'Rosh Hashanah V'Yom HaKippurim. We're now in Elul, right? So I saw last night the Levana is getting bigger. Mr. Moshe Shabbos will do Kiddush Levana. Yeah, B'Kesel Yom Chagenu. Yesh li Hespoine in Harbe, She'odom Omed B'Rosh Hashanah V'Yom HaKippurim. We're now getting close to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. A person is confident that he'll come away zakai in his din. Because right now I'm a person is zakai. A person's got to think very carefully, am I right now on a pathway which could lead me to do things which are not appropriate? Whatever it may be. So it's not true to say Basher Shon. Whenever a person is engaged, even albeit in a very minor way, but is on a certain pathway, when you go to the airport, you're on that conveyor belt, yeah? Once you're on it, you're going to end up there. So that's what you've got to be careful about. It's as if you're doing it right now. Okay, but say that. That's a second idea. The third idea, I came across just the concept in Rabbi Fran's Sefer, one of his Sfarim, And I want to develop it because I think it's a very, very interesting idea. The Parsha, amidst all the various mitzvahs in the Parsha, you have the sugya of kli geva al isha. That a man can't wear women's clothes, a woman can't wear men's clothes. It says the pasuk in the Dvarim Chaf Beis pasuk Hey, lo yeh kli geva al isha. That a woman can't wear big day ish, v'lo yilbash geva simlas isha, and vice versa. Ki tov as Hashem lokecha kol ha'isa'ila. Now, there is a parsha in Shoftim which makes reference to this issa. How so? Look at this. In Shoftim, we talk about Yael. Tveirach minoshim Yael eshes chover hakini. Minoshim ba'el tveirach. She's lauded very lavishly. That Yael saves the day. Sisera is the general of the Canaanite army, and he's running away from battle. And Yael sees him, and she brings him into the tent, and she gives him to drink, and he gets very tired, and he lies down, and he goes to sleep, and famously, it says the pasuk in Shoftim, she takes the tent peg and she kills him. If you look at the next box, Yoda leyosed teshalchena, v'yemina lahamus amelim, she stretched out her hand to this tent peg, and with her right hand she struck the person who was weary. She struck Sisera and she pierced his head, and she penetrated his temple. So she killed him. Now, says the Yalkut. It's an amazing Yalkut Shimoni. The Medrash says on this pasuk in Shoftim, what is it? Zeu she'omar hakosav yodeha shilcha bakisher. On Friday night we say Eishes Chaya, the last kapitel in Perek Lamed Aleph of Mishnah. The last chapter of Mishnah. Yodeh shilcha b'kisher zu Yael. That is a reference to Yael. She took this stick, this piece of wood. Sheloi hargosu b'kli zayin el b'yeset. Why didn't she take Sisera's sword? Take his sword. Much easier. A tent peg is pretty messy. I mean, take the sword and kill him with a sword. Tichsiv yoda liyeset teshalchena. Why did she take the tent peg? Why didn't she kill him with a sword, with his own weapon? It's a kiyum of that she didn't want to be over a posuk in this week's Sedra of lo yechli geva alisha. That she maybe a sword is a male beged, a male instrument. We talk about it, by the way, but that's not for now. But either way, she was worried about it. It may be a violation of lo yechli geva, and therefore she didn't take his sword. She took a tent peg. Now, just think about it for a second. Imagine she's on WhatsApp, and she's there. He's lying there in a deep sleep, and she does Shiloh text, and she says, "Look, I've got this guy's sword. I've got the enemy of the Jewish people. He's the last guy there. We can end the battle now. Can I take his sword? Is it a Shiloh of lo yechli geva, of beged isha?" I would imagine, I don't know, I would imagine all the respondents on Shiloh text would say, this is not perhaps a Sophic Pikuach Nefesh, this is Vadai Pikuach Nefesh, because who knows what this general is going to remass and etc. Kill the guy, however which way you can. What is the concern? So clearly, it's a Hiddur, it's a Chumrah, whatever it may be. But what do you see from here? And there's an interesting take on it. The real barometer of a person is how he behaves under pressure. If under that situation, you're in a tent, you've got the enemy of Klal Yisrael lying there, you're about to kill him, and what's going through your mind, hey, is this a Shaila of Leich Geva Alisha? That tells you a lot about the person. And the truth is, this really is the story of Klal Yisrael. How so? I'll tell you an interesting thing. Look, the Rashi in Parshas Ba'alosachal says that Moshe Rabbeinu struggled with building the menorah. The pasuk says v'zeh ma'aseh menorah. So Rashi says there on the pasuk, it's in the next box, She'era Kodesh Baruch Hu be'etzba lefi sheniskashe bo. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't quite work out how to build the menorah. It's complicated, and therefore it says v'zeh ma'aseh menorah. Kodesh Baruch Hu came and showed him. Now that was one of three things that Moshe Rabbeinu struggled with. The Gemara in Menachos Chavtes Amud Aleph says, Shleisha Dvarim hayu kashin lo Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu struggled with three things. Ad sheher LaKadosh Baruch Hu be'etzba, until HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to literally show him. Ve'eluhem, menorah, v'rosh chodesh, v'shratzim. Those were the three things. Menorah says, Zeh ma'aseh menorah. Reish Chodesh Tichsiv HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to show him this is what the Levana looks like. And Shrotzim Tichsiv V'zeh Lachem HaTomei. Now, I once saw an amazing thing. You take the words, these three things, Menorah, Shrotzim, and HaChodesh, the three things that Moshe Rabbeinu struggled with, they're Rosh Hashanah, Moshe. Moshe is Menorah, Shrotzim, Shin, and Hey HaChodesh. And if you do it backwards as well, the last letters of these three words also spell Moshe. In other words, how you deal with your struggles, that's what really defines you. It's a Meiradic idea. It's a very, very powerful idea. You know, Rabbi Cheskel Abramsky used to say an amazing thing, that there's a Gemara in Chulin which says that if you have a concern that your animal may be treif. You know, it falls, you're not sure, you know, the days gone by, you didn't have x-ray machines, MRIs, how are you going to tell? So the Gemara in Chulin says, you take the animal and you watch it as it walks in the water. Put it in a sort of a low-lying river and watch it walk upstream, against the flow of the river. If it can walk against the flow of the river, it's a siman that it's kosher. So Dayan Abramsky used to say, amazing, it's the siman kashrus of a Jew generally. Watch him not when he swims with the river, watch him how he walks against the flow of the river. That is the siman kashrus of a Yid. Amazing. Now, I'll tell you something astonishing. Look at this. This I heard from Rabbi Reisman, I think, in the name of Rav Gifter. An amazing idea. There is a very difficult Mishnah in Kalim. Yeah, it's the Mishnah that we're not so familiar with. It's in Tahara, it's 30 Parakim in Kalim. This is Perek Yud Zayin, Mishnah Yud Gimel. Says the Mishnah, Kol Shebayom Tahar, all animals in the sea, all fish in the sea are Tahar. In other words, if you make keli out of the skin of a fish, yeah, then that keli is Tahar. Chutz mikelev hayam. There's a certain animal, it's sea otter, whatever you want to call it, says the Bar Tanura explaining that Mishnah, Kol shebayam tahar, Kol brias shebayam, im osa me'oiron kalim. If you make kalim out of the skin of that animal, ein mekablim tumah, tichsiv oy beged oy er oy sak, beged min hagodl min haaretz, af er hagodl min haaretz, and not min hayam. And therefore you make you've got a beged, a jacket made out of a dolphin skin or whale skin, it's not makabel tumah. Chutz mikelav hayam, says the Bar Tanura, lefi shekol shabriya shebayam ein echad mehem beirech ni'abosha. All other sea creatures, if they're under stress or pressure, they're never going to run away to the dry land, they'll die. If a hunter goes into the water, tries to capture them, they're not going to go onto dry land. Ela kelev hayam bilvad, apart from the sea otter. Hilkoch, sorry. Therefore, it's defined as a land creature. And if therefore you make keli out of the skin of this kelev hayam, this sea otter, then it's in fact makabel tumah. That's a Mishnah in Keli. And that's indeed the halacha. Asks Rav Gifter, really? The sea otter spends 99% of its time in the water. 1% of its time, when the hunter is running after it, jumps onto dry land. That's what defines it? Says Rav Gifter, exactly. Because how a person behaves under duress is the real barometer of who that person is. Astonishing. That's the idea. And just by the way, this goes to the root of who we are. Famous vod that the Pasuk says when Yaakov Avinu is fighting with the Malach of Esau and they're dueling and they're battling all night. And his name is changed. The Pasuk says, "Vayomer lo Yaakov ye'omer utshimcha." You are no longer going to be called Yaakov, ki im Yisrael. You're going to be called Yisrael. Why? Ki sariso im Elokim v'manoshim v'tuchel, because you fought against angels and men and you overcame them. So hang on a second. So therefore, we're called Yisrael based on this name. Your name is going to be changed from Yaakov to Yisrael. Why? Ki sariso im Manoshim, because you battled, you struggled with an angel and you overcame him. But that's not the point. The point is Vatuchal. You overcame him. We should not be called Yisrael. We should be called some derivative of Vatuchal. Isn't that the main point? We overcame him. Says whoever it is, I forget who. The Ikka is the struggle. The consequence, the outcome is not your concern. We have to do our best. Well, the outcome is up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Ikka is the struggle. What happens in the consequences is not our responsibility. It's not our hands always. Sometimes it's out of our hands. But the Ikka is the struggle, and therefore the very name Yisrael goes to the root of this concept. The ikar is the struggle, not the outcome. Amazing. So what have we got? Three ideas to take away from this week's Parsha. Number one, why does Egla Rufa serve as the intro to this Parsha? Why is it shipped into the middle of the whole topics of war? Number two, why make the exceptions come to the battleground and then go home? And they're very strange exemptions. Like I said, planting a vineyard is not going to get you off jury service. The answer is because Egla Rufa teaches us the value of human life. The Beis Din and Sanhedrin get involved to some dead person who people didn't care enough about. So we're telling the soldiers, this, we do care about human life. Don't be desensitized by what you're going to see in battle. That serves as a very important introduction to our war. And that's why we bring them there and we say that Klal Yisrael life is about building, not destroying. We value various people and their contributions, even though there is occasionally a sad need for war. Ben Sura, Murray, the famous Kasha, what about him and Yishmael? The answer of the Marsha, that it's not him. Mashenken, Ben Sura, Murray, it's him, etc. And then Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, if you're already on the pathway, that already is not Al Shem Ha'osid. And then this final idea that's with Yael. Yael takes the tent peg. She didn't want to take the sword. Why not? She was worried about the Rech Together. The Teretz, how can that be? It's Pikuach Nefesh. You see that how a person deals with difficult parashas in life, with a stressful episode, is the real barometer of a person. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu struggled with three things in his life. That goes to the very root of the person. Moshe spells Menorah Shrotzim HaChodesh, the first letters, the last letters. And that's Pshat, says Rav Gifter, with the sea otter, an amazing thing. 99% of its time it can be swimming happily in the sea. 1% of the time it goes on to dry land. That defines you. And therefore it has a status of a land animal in terms of Tzum Tahara. And that really goes to the very core of who we are, Klal Yisrael. We're not called the derivative of Atuchal. It's Kisarisei Manoshim, Emanokim Vanoshim, because the struggle is what's important. Very important, very interesting and important idea.